My favourite thing in any London theatre is the way the doors close at the Barbican. Bear with me. There's a door at the end of almost every row in the theatre. And when a show is about to start, they all close at the exact same moment. It magically heightens your expectation. I saw it just last night. I was here to watch a new dance work by New York's star choreographer Pam Tanowitz, a fascinating piece to music by David Lang, set to the Bible's most amorous poem, the Song of Songs from the Jewish Old Testament. The words are lush, the music shimmers, and the dance is unexpected, challenging, highly charged, but not giving up its secrets. I'm David Jays, and this is Why Dance Matters, the Royal Academy of Dance podcast. I'm back in the Barbican Theatre. Our producer Sarah is thrilled because the acoustic is peachy. And I'm thrilled to speak to Pam because most dance careers don't go the way hers has done. Pam and her company had an under-the-radar following in New York for a decade or so, but only recently did she win wider attention with a piece set to T.S. Eliot's 4 quartets that led to international tours and commissions for prestige outfits like the Royal Ballet and New York City Ballet. They're bringing her work to London in March 2024. In between, Pam worked at dance, but also regular jobs, administration, serving coffee. She didn't swerve. She knew what she wanted to create. I'm looking forward to speaking to her about how you keep going, about challenging audiences, about what makes dance Jewish. And the doors might not all close at once, but let's imagine they do. Now. Pam, welcome to Why Dance Matters. And it's very lovely to be sitting in the Barbican Theatre, beautiful theatre, where last night I saw your gorgeous Song of Songs. And I've heard that you're not a huge fan of seeing your own work performed.
It's true. It's true. I mean,
how was it then last night? Because you know, lovely reception, sparkly shoes.
Yes, I put on the
good.
Sparkly shoes, but I mean, I see my work in dress rehearsal and I watch it from the audience in all the tech rehearsals. But when it's the actual performance, it's hard for me to sit in the audience with other people. It's just really, really stressful. So I'm usually backstage. Once in a while, when I'm in a place where I don't know anyone, I'll try to stand in the back and watch, but it's still hard because I don't like seeing people I know, but even strangers stress me out. So I don't know. I don't know what to say, but I love sitting in the Barbican. It's gorgeous. This theater is incredible.
And is that because you're worried about it not being absolutely perfect in every detail? Is it not even as logical
it's
as
not
that?
It's not logical. My dancers are amazing. It's that, you know what? When it's the performance, it's not mine anymore. And so it's this whole other thing. That's part of it. And I think when I'm backstage, it's almost like I want to be there if something goes wrong, even though obviously I would never do anything. I wouldn't like run on stage to try to fix something or grab the Betsy, the stage manager's like mic and start trying to fix stuff that I don't know how to fix. But I feel like if I'm close to the show, I could do something if something bad happens. That's one. And two is I don't like watching people watch my dance because if I'm in the audience, that's what I will do instead of watching my piece. It's very distracting. It's hard for me to block everything out. So those are the reasons. They're filled with anxiety. Maybe one day I'll grow out of them all. I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe you need a kind of base level of anxiety to impel you.
I think so. I think the day that I'm not nervous is the day I probably should stop. Like I care so much about it. And I think that you have a point. Like I think the part of the anxiety is the driving force for it as well.
Is there an intensely pleasurable stage of the process, though? Is there a happy Pam stage?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the studio, when I'm making, I'm happy. In the studio is where I'm the least unhappy. And I love being in process, trying to solve problems and figure out what, I could spend 30 minutes on where to place a hand, how a dancer is executing, all the different ways we can do it. That to me is interesting.
As you say, incredible dancers. Are you still tinkering? Does a piece reach a final fixed form, or is that
no, I don't
for the
think
benefit
so.
of the tape? Pam is screwing up her face.
I mean, no, because, so for instance, this piece you saw last night, Song of Songs, we premiered it in 2022. And that moment, I knew it was a draft. And I think this piece has a sort of a long history of like working on it. Then it was the pandemic, so it was postponed for 2 or 3 years. It was supposed to be in 2020. So it finally premiered in 2022. So I worked with each of the dancers individually, either on Zoom or by themselves in rehearsal outside in New York. So that's where I'm sure you noticed that there's a lot of very individualized vocabulary for each dancer. And that's how that came to be. I don't always work that way. So that was also very interesting as a director, where I had all these dancers with all their movement. And then I had to figure out in the studio, what does this all mean together now? So that was sort of a different way of working for me, which I really liked. But I knew when I put it together that it was a first draft. And third, fourth, and the ending are totally different than a year ago for this show. Yeah, we worked really hard this summer. I stayed put. I didn't travel. I didn't do anything. We rehearsed 3 days a week for the whole summer. I didn't have a full cast ever because everyone had their plans. So another layer to that is when I finally got everybody together, I needed to see what I made, because I would have like 5 dancers and 6 dancers and 4 dancers, but I would still keep going. I love that, because then when I get everyone together, I'm like, whoa, what did I just do? I love, so it's always, I love being surprised. So just back to your question, is anything ever fixed? No, it's boring. Why would I do that? I'm in a different place in my life. The dancers are in a different place. We're living in a different world. It has to breathe. Same with having the live music. It's like living, breathing musicians and singers with living, breathing dancers making this thing. And none of it is improvised, but it's different all the time. And even before the show, we were like, what's going to happen? Even though they all had their steps and they knew where they were supposed to be, there's still an element of mystery.
And you describing the way it was made makes perfect sense as well, because for most of the piece, there are 7 dancers, which is such an interesting number, because there's no way you can divide that up into neat groups.
No,
that's
and
always
I did that Yes, that's also on purpose. Like, I didn't want it to have enough men for women, and it's, too easy. I like an odd number. I like to push myself and figure out how to solve this. What am I doing?
Part of the preparation for this piece, for Song of Songs, was looking at Jewish dance, which is it's such an interesting thing, because I think we know what Jewish writing is, especially like American mid-century. We know Philip Roth, we know Arthur Miller, we know intellectual, inappropriately horny men. We know all about that.
Yes.
And we know about Jewish filmmakers. Jewish dance, what is the Jewishness in Jewish dance?
I mean, it's so open, because there's Jewish American choreographers like David Gordon and Anna Sokoloff. I mean, there's the 50s choreographers, the Judson choreographers, and how their Jewishness plays in or doesn't play into their work. Then there's Israeli folk dance, and there's all of using that material. And so to me, the research that I did wasn't necessarily about one kind or person. It was more like, look at all this stuff, and what does it have to do with me? I don't know if it has anything to do with me, except that I am Jewish and I'm making dances. And before I started this research, it was during the pandemic, I applied to the library for this fellowship, and I got it. So I was
the New York Public Library,
the Performing Arts Library. They're amazing. I love them. Linda Murray, and I don't know if you know her, but she's incredible. And so during the pandemic, I actually had digital access to videos I wanted. I mean, it was incredible. But a lot of the journey was wondering what it had to do with what I do already and how to process that information. So, for example, I did look at a lot of like folk dance steps, and I tried to learn stuff off video and things like that, and to take actual steps that belong to a specific culture and they use it in a social and political way, and to sort of pull it out of that and use it just physically is what I was interested in doing. And then have that material talk to other material, like real dance steps, quote unquote, or modern dance steps or balletic steps, and have them in dialogue with each other and sort of absorb those ideas and steps into my lexicon is what ended up happening.
And there are those moments. There are chains, there are rings, there are all those kind of formations. It's like being at a bar mitzvah, but without an exuberant auntie kind of bearing down on you.
Yes. I mean, I love the horror. Even before this dance, though, I always put grapevine in my dances. Always. I had it in Goldberg. I had it in 4 quartets, maybe. It's just great traveling step. It's very useful. So, I mean, I love a good horror always. So,
and this piece is dedicated to your father, Herb. What was he like?
Oh, he was a complicated man. Very complicated and hard to know. When I started out as making dances, I felt like I had to prove myself. And I think part of my energy trying to go forward and my ambition of trying to get my work out there was in response to trying to prove myself and my family, like that I could do it. But at a certain point, I had to let that go. I didn't need to use that anymore. And then right before my dad died, he looked at me and he said, well, I guess you really are a late bloomer, like 50 years old, getting a good New York Times review or whatever. Not that a review makes you successful or not, but just that he said that. I don't know if it's in the program, but sometimes I write, it's dedicated to my dad and all the late bloomers.
That's very lovely. I love that. I don't know if you are a late bloomer, Pam. I think it's the world is the late bloomer. We're just catching up.
Maybe, but also I am 53. When I moved to New York in my early 20s, I was, no Instagram, no computers. I don't even think I emailed people. We used to throw rocks at people's windows to say, hey, you want to come down for a drink or whatever. But what that does gives us time. Because I just kept making work. I didn't make a dance and post it on Instagram the next day. The Gen X life, is totally different. I remember after my first show I did at CBGB's Gallery, which was the art gallery next to CBGB's. Wow. They treated us like a band. And we went in and we got like a split of the cover. And the New York Times came as my first New York Times review that Jack Anderson reviewed. He was in CBGB's Gallery reviewing my show, no lighting, nothing. And then we waited that night at the newsstand on 8th Street to get the newspaper to read it. Not, you don't just turn your phone on. You had to wait till midnight till they throw the paper on the street, and then you frantically look in it. And so I think that was a blessing for me because it gave me time to work on my work.
Yeah.
Not have the pressure of anybody looking or trying to do something or be someone I wasn't. And it took me a long time because I wasn't a star dancer from that path of being in a dance company and then being a star of that company and then making your own company. And that's great. That's a different path that people go. So I think a lot of times people want to know, where did she come from? They don't understand where I came from, Yeah.
When had making entered the picture? Was that pretty much from the beginning of dancing?
It was in college, my junior year at Ohio State University. We had to go through it. It was a very traditional, it was not a conservatory, but you had to take improvisation 1, improvisation 2, choreography and music 1. It was very rigorous and had a lot of rules. So when I finally got to make my own piece, it was amazing. And so it was like my junior year. And that's when I realized that was more interesting, like being outside and looking and seeing and solving and trying to figure out how to make this thing that I didn't really know that much about.
Yeah. So it was the problem solving aspect really got you hooked from the beginning.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's interesting because there's a really lovely little film I saw, I think when you were working with the Royal Ballet last year, and you're rehearsing with the dancers and you say something like, there's a little too much drama seeping into your face, which is
it was probably
really nice
like was it like Anna Rose or something, or Will, or was it what?
One of the emotive Royal Ballet dancers.
Yeah.
But I mean, and you seem, just from this little bit of conversation that we're having, someone who is very, very easy access to their own emotion. You don't feel kind of closed off, but you don't want that in.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's interesting for my work. It doesn't mean I don't think it's interesting when I go see the ballet, and that's what I try to say when I'm working with ballet dancers. It's that it's not that I like that's bad. It's just not what I want for my work. Yeah. And as a performer, it's interesting for them to figure out how to perform different kinds of dances because it's just more tools in their toolbox. It makes them a better performer. So they don't just go into these, like they're not thinking and they're just doing what they've always been doing and there's no consciousness. And so in order to be present, you have to be thinking, and then you have to say to yourself, you know, I don't just have to project this thing because they've been doing that since they were in baby ballet. And so it's ingrained in them. So what I'm asking them to do is change that a little. And I think that's the hard part. It's not that they can't do it. Yeah. It's that when they click into their performance mode, something else happens that they're used to because it's what they always do. Yeah.
There is that sort of dancer smile for the happy steps and the sort of the tragic look for the serious bits.
And also, but it's not just ballet. In modern dance, there's the modern dance corner. Like what, I always want to know, like what is in that corner?
The stare into the middle distance.
Yeah. Like what is that corner?
Is that part of, I mean, obviously there are dancers you've worked with for quite a while now, so
yes,
they understand you, they understand the process and they understand what you're interested in. But at first, is that sometimes kind of quite hard to explain that you're interested in something else about them?
Absolutely. And it's actually really good for me to work with different dancers because when my dancers, like you said, they know what I'm after. So there's a part of like a verbal articulation that is easy for me. And then when I go into ballet or other working with new dancers, or like even when I go into Juilliard, you know, I'm making a piece on them next year, the students, it makes me work harder because I have to explain what I want, and that's good for me. Because then I get to reassess, what do I want? You know, even though, you know, and I get to do that work too that I expect dancers do for me.
What is it that tends to ignite your interest in a new piece? What is it that sparks it? Because the things you've used as scores, the Goldberg variations and David Lang's beautiful Song of Songs, numbers, and T.S. Eliot, the four quartets. I mean, they're very, very various.
Yes. And I think a lot of different ways, actually. Like, so all the pieces that you just listed, Goldberg, four quartets, well, those two, for instance, were sort of dares in a way. So it's not like I woke up one morning and was like, I'm going to choreograph to Goldberg variations. It was actually quite the opposite. Simona came to me. Usually a choreographer goes after a musician and says, can we work together? She came to me and said, I want to collaborate. I don't know what that means. How do I collaborate with the choreographer? Because she's not a composer. She's a musician. So, but her interpretation was integral to how I made the work. The way she played it had freedom and openness. There was space for dance. But she came to me and I said, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. And then I woke up the next day and I was like, I'm going to do it. Because everything up until then, I used very experimental, scratchy violins like I love, and like really crazy. Sometimes I go really crazy and the audience is like not into it at all. But I love it. So for me, Goldberg was a risk. For me, Goldberg was experimental because I had never done anything like that. So that was a dare. And also I was scared because, you know, the Jerry Robbins version, it's iconic and there's so much stuff and everybody knows the Goldberg variations. Like it's in movies, it's playing when you go shopping, you know, it's everywhere. So that was that. And then four quartets was sort of the same. I was talking to Gideon Lester, the artistic director of Fisher Center, in 2015, and I had used one line from East Coker in one of my titles. And he asked me about it. He was like, what's going on with this title? Wherein there's no ecstasy was the line. And I said, well, it's T.S. Eliot. And I had like put T.S. Eliot next to something like a J.D. Salinger thing. And he was interested in that and why. And I said how much I loved four quartets. And I was carrying it around for 20 years. And then he looked at me, he said, well, the anniversary of four quartets is in 2018. Do you want to make a dance? And I was like, sure. But I never thought it would happen. I thought because I didn't know Gideon that well at the time. And he's like a mover and a shaker and he gets stuff done. But I didn't know that then. And so I thought it would just go away.
Thought you were safe.
Yeah, but it happened. And so those two pieces really came from other people and then had conversations with me. So that's interesting. And then there's other times where I seek out certain kinds of music I'm very interested in. I did a piece to Nan Caro's string quartets that are gorgeous. That was very intentional. And he's very famous for player piano pieces. Do you know Connellan Nan Caro? And so he has these string quartets. So it really just depends. There's no formula on how I come up with dances. Another time I'll just start with no music and in the studio with movement ideas if I'm inspired by a movie or a piece of art. It depends.
If I could just drag you back a little bit to the,
yes.
I don't want to call them the lost years, the late blooming years. I mean, you were raising your daughter, you were making a living. It would have been really easy for making dance to be just left to one side as the one thing that would be too much of a burden on top of everything else.
Yeah, but then what is my life?
That was the question, really. Yeah, so that was never an option.
No. I was married at the time. My husband at the time really was able to take care of Gemma my daughter Gemma, while I was rehearsing, and then I would work. I always had a day job, and then I would rehearse at night. And I had this great job at City Center where I was the studio manager. So I'd rent out the studios, and then at 6:00 I would go down and I would have my dancers meet me and I would rehearse. I would have free studio space and we would rehearse 6 to 9, probably 3 or 4 times a week on the weekends. And I would usually do one show a year in New York. So I never even traveled for work till I was 48, something like that. So that's what my path was, very slow and steady,
And did you think this is just what it's going to carry on being? I'll just carry on making the pieces I want to make that may or may not get seen in a very wide way.
Exactly.
And that would have been enough?
Yeah, because my gigs in New York got better and better. I went from self-producing to the Joyce Theater and some other good theaters. But yeah, I honestly never imagined that I would get to travel and do so much work. I'm so lucky that I have so many opportunities. I teach, but I never imagined that I wouldn't have a day job, an everyday job, a 9-to-5 job. I thought I would have that my whole life. So I'm very lucky that I was able to do it. And, sometimes when I get overwhelmed, I think, well, I'm lucky I have all these opportunities and one day they're going to stop calling. So might as well just do everything now. And then when they stop calling, I can go get a job.
Pam Tanowitz, we are the lucky ones because we are getting to see your work. And that, that's especially with dance. If you'd made a film, it could go out there. If you'd written a play, it could be published. With dance, you kind of need to be in the room, don't you?
Yeah, and actually, that's why dance matters. because of that. Yeah. Because that's the thing about dance. It's different. It's not a manuscript you can hold or CD or a painting on a wall. And dances are really hard to make. I say this to my choreography students. I try to make them understand how hard making a dance is, because there's so many elements and it's visual and performing. It's everything. And there's so many logistical issues that come about, like I was describing at the beginning, like, you need the dancers in the room. Sometimes I'm jealous of painters or writers because they get to do things by themselves and get stuff done by themselves. But then I'm also not jealous. Then when I have people with me, it's amazing. But when they can't come to rehearsal, then you're like, oh.
Was there something easier, maybe that's not the right word, about kind of going under the radar? Because now there are more eyes, not just audience eyes, but there are more, organizational eyes.
Absolutely. The first 25 years of my career, nobody really knew who I was. And it was frustrating and upsetting sometimes, but it was a gift as well because of that too. So yes, absolutely. There was some relief in that as well.
As we've been talking about, you know and love your dance history. And we talk a lot about the founding fathers of dance, whether it's the classics or George Balanchine, Jerome Robbins, Merce Cunningham. How important is the tradition of founding mothers in dance?
Oh, absolutely. Well, also it's interesting because here the founding people are different. So when I come to London, like I'm not brushed up in that. So you could actually
Ashton and your Macmillans and all of that.
Well, I love Ashton because ABT does Ashton, so I get to see Macmillan when I come visit. I mean, I love Ashton so much. But as far as modern dance here, who are the founding people here in London?
So no, that's true. It's the sort of the Rambert school, and that's a different tradition altogether.
It's different. We have the founding mothers. Well, we have like Martha, obviously. We have Martha Graham. And in Martha Graham's company, we had Paul Taylor and Merce Cunningham. And so they left their mommy and started their new company, and they were bad, and they did all these other things that she didn't do that they wanted to do. So, yeah, there's a lot there. But it's all important to me. And I think when I first moved to New York, like I've talked about before, and there was no internet and no Instagram and blah, 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 you had to walk to the Library of Performing Arts, and you had to fill out a form and show your library card and pick out videos, and you got to watch things. And I did that all the time. I was obsessed. I watched Mark Morris and Twyla Tharp and Paul Taylor. And at my job at City Center at that time, they had an amazing dance program. It's very different now. They have a good program now, but they had a series, Cunningham, Taylor, ABT, Allie, and Allie still comes, but they would have 5 dance companies all the time. And so I got to sit in the theater and watch them rehearse. So I watched like years and years of Paul Taylor sitting there smoking, watching his dances. I mean, unbelievable. Like, he didn't know I was there. I got to watch ABT rehearsing Mark Morris pieces, and I just got such a great lesson, history lessons, like in real life. So I was really lucky. And then New York City Ballet, I used to pour coffee in the patrons lounge. So I used to watch them. I would sneak in, not have to buy a ticket, watch all Balanchine, all Jerry Robbins. I was very resourceful. But modern dance choreographers are scrappy in the best sense and resourceful. Like, I could put on a show by myself and I knew how to do it.
And now, of course, with the dancers you've got as well, each of them is a living, walking repository of everything that they've done.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, people like Marley Okamura, who danced with Mark Morris for
20 years.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is like when I work with dancers, I'm collaborating with them. I'm collaborating with their history. And her 20 years of working with Mark, and Melissa was in Cunningham for years, 15 years. They all have amazing and different histories. I'm working with all their teachers. I didn't teach them how to dance, and I would never take credit for it. They work so hard. It's so extremely difficult to be a freelance dancer in New York City. They all dance for multiple choreographers. They have to pay their bills. They have to keep their body in shape. It's hard.
So, late bloomer.
Yes.
I will stop saying that, actually.
It's fine.
It's gone
I like
from
it.
being charming to kind of rude now.
No, it's not rude. It's not rude. Because it'll always be positive to me. So,
perfect.
Yeah.
Well, this is a good blooming moment because you've been at the Royal Ballet here quite a lot. Your own company's works are touring. A piece for New York City Ballet is going to be visiting London next year. And this is not bad. Tell us a bit about that.
Sure. I mean, that was a piece. It's called Gustave Le Gray. It's named after the Caroline Shaw score. It's for 4 people. It was created for a special occasion at the Kennedy Center. It originally had 2 dancers from Miami City Ballet and 2 from Dance Theater of Harlem. And I was really lucky. Virginia Donson and Lourdes chose me to create this piece. It was performed once. So I made a ballet version of that piece, and I made a modern dance version for my company that was performed, I think, during the pandemic on live stream. Anyway, so there's 2 versions of that piece, and then New York City Ballet loved it, and they licensed it from me. And so now sometimes it's done with all New York City Ballet, and sometimes it's done with 2 Dance Theater of Harlem dancers and 2 New York City Ballet dancers, which they do sometimes, which is great because that's what it originally was. But it's in flat shoes. It's not in point shoes, which I think is interesting. And there's a moving piano. It's only 10 minutes, and it's interesting because a lot of people like it, but I never meant it to go like have a life like this. Yeah. It's one of my dances that it's like a little more accessible, quote unquote. So that's fine. That's in March, and I hope that I can come. I'm hoping I can be here. And then I'm coming back to Royal next year as well.
Are you?
Yeah. I'm expanding the Dispatch duet that I did at the Opera House with that duet. I'm making it into a full ballet, so I'll be here for that.
And you were saying before, there's something pleasurable about working with a new company, a new set of dancers who have their own very particular training and their own particular expectations.
I love it. I love it all, you know. It's all like, oh, okay. It just changes the dynamic. It gets me on my toes, and it's all interesting to me.
The future sounds really lovely. I like this idea of the future. This is good. But now we stop. The present moment has to come to an end. But there is one last question, which is, as you know, Pam Tanowitz, why does dance matter to you?
Well, I sort of started saying it before, but I really think it is about how it's so different from all other art forms, that there is no product that you can hold in your hand, and to be able to create something that's happening at the moment and then just is gone, very ephemeral, like to be able to create that and have opportunities to make experiences like that for audiences, for me, I think is why it matters. And then also the process that goes along with it.
Giving hope to all the late bloomers. That was such a lovely conversation. At least it was for me. I really hope you enjoyed it too. You'll find links to Pam's works in our show notes, including the New York City Ballet season at Sadler's Wells in March, along with links to everything RAD. Please do subscribe, like, or review the podcast so that more people can find Why Dance Matters. Our guest today was Pam Tanowitz. Why Dance Matters is made by the RAD team of Niamh Carey-Furness, Keisha Dodd and Katie Hagan, and our artwork is by Bex Glendinning. And I'm really pleased to have given our producer, Sarah Miles, the perfect acoustic she deserves. I'm David Jays. Take care and see you soon.